Some news this week about some comments you made about the structure of Division I college athletics. Why don't we start by just having you expound on those thoughts?
Well, thanks, Jim. Yeah, I guess I made a little more news than I even thought I would. It really came down to finally feeling that it was time to discuss this so-called Power Five, Group of Five divide and the harm, damage it's doing to college athletics generally. And inequality never is good, and it never does anything good for anyone. But it's also disenfranchising potentially half of college athletics. I've seen it myself, with our conference being categorized as a so-called Group of Five, G5 conference. We have to remember that the autonomy group, that Group of Five conferences, that wasn't a marketing thing. That was a legislative issue with the NCAA. They were allowed to pass certain kinds of legislation that had been stymied in the NCAA governance process, and so consequently, it's not I want to emphasize that it's not a marketing issue. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the Power Five business has never made a lot of sense. When UConn won the national championship in our conference, were they a non-power team? I mean, how absurd is that? When we beat Auburn in the bowl game when they were number 7, when we beat Florida State at number 8, when we beat Baylor at number 4, when we beat this year USC, which almost made the playoff, were our teams non-power? It doesn't make any sense. It never did in that sense. But it's become even more outdated. The P5 is, not the same. The marquee teams have left some of the conferences. There's a lot of division within that group. It's not the same. And so consequently, what I've realized, and I've been concerned about this divide for a long time. It's not something new, as you know, and I've talked about it. But what concerns me more now is that the world has changed. You have a college football playoff now that's going to be 6 conference champions, 6 at large. Not 5 plus 1, not 5 and then 1 of the so-called G5. It's now equal. There is an equality here now that makes sense. It doesn't mean that all the FBS conferences are equal in terms of their achievement or in terms of the money they make or in terms of the size of their stadiums. That's not the point. The point is they now start from equal footing, and some are going to end up being more equal than others. Let's talk about elite FBS conferences, and let's stop this P5, G5 business where we get relegated in a sense to people think we don't play in the same division. That's absurd. I've had writers call me and say, well, are you even eligible for the playoff? Well, that's absurd. And Cincinnati made the playoff. We had several teams that could have made that playoff and didn't. So again, I think we have to pivot now. And people have said, well, you stressed P6 for years. Well, of course we did, because the media talked for 10 years about nothing but P5. And we had to brand ourselves like them because we are like them. We wanted to be part of that group. But now it's time to move on and focus on 10 FBS conferences, and that's really what the purpose of the statement was. The fact is, there hadn't been any autonomous legislation passed in a long, long time. That autonomy concept is almost archaic at this point, with more decision-making devolving to individual conferences. We have 10 FBS conferences that all ought to be given the same respect. And also the difference now, the final thing I'll say is the difference now between the number 2 conference, either whether it's the SEC or the Big Ten, and number 3, that gap is far wider now than between the number 3 conference and the American. It's not even close anymore. And that's another big change that has happened over literally the past 2 years of realignment. And by the way, realignment, while it's affected us, we're going to be fine. And we can talk about that if you'd like. But we're bringing in some really good teams, and we've got good teams remaining. So our conference is going to remain strong.